The architecture of obsession, the Machiavellian blueprint. Most people walk through life asking the wrong questions. They wander through their days wondering, how can I be more loved? How can I become indispensable? How can I make sure I am never forgotten? They seek comfort, they seek warmth, and in their desperate search for validation, they become common, they become predictable. But Machiavelli, he didn't look at the world through the lens of sentimentality. He asked the questions that actually move the needle of power. Why is it that some people are impossible to purge from the mind? Why do certain figures remain burned into the psyche long after they've disappeared from the room? Why do some presences feel more powerful in their absence than they ever did while standing right in front of you? The truth is uncomfortable. People are not haunted by what they have. They are haunted by what they have lost. They are not obsessed with what is clear. They are obsessed with what is blurred. Obsession does not start with a spark of love. It starts with a seed of uncertainty. Clarity is the enemy of influence because clarity brings relief, and a mind that is relaxed is a mind that is ready to let go. But uncertainty is a parasite. It keeps the mind working, spinning, trying to solve a puzzle that seems to have no end. When the mind is occupied, it becomes tethered. And once that tether is tight enough, the individual loses control. This isn't a bedtime story. We aren't here to talk about romance or manipulative parlor tricks. This is an exploration of the architecture of the human mind and how it bonds to power. This is an mimicry of influence. Because in the eyes of the great realist, people don't fall for you. They fall for the vacuum you leave behind. Phase 1. Control accessibility, not access. Most people have a primitive reflex. When they want to build a connection, they lean in. They make themselves available. They reply to the message within seconds. They answer every call on the first ring. They try to fill every silence and bridge every gap because they fear the void. They think that by being present, they are being valuable. But Machiavelli observed a different law of nature, something that is always there, something that is constantly within reach, eventually becomes part of the background noise. It stops occupying space in the mind because the mind doesn't need to work to keep it. The human brain is an efficiency machine. It only invests energy into what is scarce. Abundance leads to mental laziness. Scarcity leads to mental obsession. When you are always there, you are a given. You are predictable. You are safe. And safety is the death of desire. But when your accessibility becomes a variable, the mind wakes up. It begins to predict. It begins to guess. It starts writing scripts about where you are, what you're doing, and what you're thinking. Understand this clearly. This is not about ghosting or disappearing. Disappearing is a rupture, and a rupture leads to being forgot. The secret lies in the rhythm. It is the dance between presence and absence. Sometimes you are fast, sometimes you are slow, sometimes you provide a deep, soul-stirring connection, and then you step back. This wave creates a psychological fluctuation. Humans adapt to the static, but they are hardwired to focus on the variable. Variable stimuli require attention. Attention is mental energy, and wherever mental energy is spent, a bond is formed. When you control your accessibility, you force the other person to solve for X. They try to decode your intentions. They try to figure out your game. And in the process of trying to solve you, they become addicted to the chase. Do not make the amateur mistake of going cold. Total silence is a wall, and walls eventually get tired of being stared at. Machiavelli's approach is far more subtle. The door is open, but the key is not guaranteed. You respond, but the timing is unpredictable. You show interest, but it is not a constant stream. This creates an internal imbalance. Because the mind hates what it cannot control, it will obsessively try to manage you. When someone doesn't know when you'll be there, they begin to make you the center of their world. By controlling the rhythm, you are essentially stating that your time is the prize. You are signaling that your life has its own gravity, its own priorities, and its own mission. You don't jump for every call because you are a person of purpose. The message you send is silent but devastatingly clear. Access to me is a privilege, not a right. Once that shifts, their behavior shifts. They become more careful. They weigh their words. They stop pushing. Why? Because for the first time, the possibility of losing you has entered their mind. And humans will fight significantly harder to keep what they might lose than to gain what they don't yet have. And here is the most important peak. Phase 2. Create the peak, then withdraw. The human mind is not a linear recording device. It doesn't remember a relationship as a steady, flat line. A relationship that is always nice, always polite, and always available might be safe, but it is entirely forgettable. It becomes a routine, and routines are ignored. Machiavelli understood that if you want to leave a mark, you have to embrace the wave. You need fluctuations because fluctuations produce emotional energy. And emotional energy is the raw material of obsession. You must consciously create what we call an emotional peak. This isn't about being fake or bombarding someone with empty praise. It's about creating a moment of genuine, high-intensity depth. A conversation where they feel truly seen. A moment where they share something they've never told anyone else. It doesn't have to be long, but it must be intense. 1 hour of deep, raw connection is worth more than a month of "how was your day" texts. The mind tags this moment as special and labels you as the source of that feeling. But here is where most people fail. When they hit that peak, they want to stay there. They try to double down. They try to make the next day just as intense. Machiavelli would tell you that this is the fastest way to kill the magic. The moment the peak is reached, you must withdraw. You don't explain it. You don't apologize for it. You just let the temperature drop. The mind abhors a vacuum. When you pull back after an intense moment, you create a space that the other person feels a desperate need to fill. They start asking themselves internal questions. What happened? Where did that feeling go? Was it me? Every time they ask these questions, the bond gets deeper. This withdrawal isn't a punishment. It isn't the silent treatment. It's just a shift in rhythm. You are still there, but the intensity is gone. They will naturally compare the current cold state to the peak state and feel a sense of lack. This is how obsession is born. It's not an obsession with a person, it's an obsession with recapturing a specific feeling. You become the keeper of the key, but the key doesn't always turn. This unpredictability makes the peak even more valuable. If the peak happened every day, it would become the new boring. But if it's rare, it's a miracle. The person becomes trapped in a state of constant expectation. They are always on, always waiting, always thinking about you. They will begin to adjust their life to try and pull you back to that peak. You didn't have to demand anything. You just set the rhythm and the mind did the rest. People don't remember how good you were to them. They remember the most intense moment they shared with you and the silence that followed. Phase 3, the power of the missing piece. There is a common, destructive reflex in modern connection, the urge to be fully known. People think that by laying every card on the table, their history, their traumas, their deepest fears, they are building intimacy. But from a Machiavellian perspective, you aren't building intimacy, you're exhausting your value. A book that has been read cover to cover is a book that belongs on a shelf, not in your hands. The human mind is a hunter. It craves discovery. Once a thing is fully known, it provides safety, but it loses the power to excite. When you give someone the full file on who you are, you leave them with nothing to wonder about. They stop thinking about you because there is nothing left to solve. You have become a finished project. The strategy is to leave a missing piece. This doesn't mean you wear a mask or lie. It means you are conscious about what you reveal. You show them one room of your house, but you keep the rest of the doors locked. You show them your intelligence, but you don't reveal every thought. You show them your depth, but you don't show them the bottom. When they see a partial picture, their brain will experience a cognitive itch. They will feel a tension to complete the image. For Machiavelli, uncertainty is the ultimate tool of control. If they think they know everything about you, they feel they have power over you. But if they realize there are layers they haven't reached, they become occupied. They will invest time, energy, and analysis into trying to reach you. And the more they invest, the harder it is for them to walk away. Because leaving you would mean admitting they failed to solve the puzzle. You must be like a deep well. People should feel that there is water down there, but they should never be able to see the floor. This keeps you in the center. While they are busy trying to prove they can understand you, you don't have to prove anything to them. You don't need their approval or their validation. You simply exist as a challenge. People don't take the obvious seriously. They take the unsolved seriously. Your value isn't built by what you say. It's built by what you keep to your soul. Phase 4, do not be a force, be the gravity. Finally, you must understand the difference between being a force and being gravity. A force is something that pushes or pulls. It's active, it's loud. People who try to create obsession by constantly texting, constantly showing up, or constantly demanding attention are using force. It's exhausting, and it eventually creates resistance. It lowers your value because it screams, "I need you to look at me." Gravity is different. Gravity doesn't explain itself. It doesn't beg. It just exists. And because it is massive and stable, everything else naturally starts to orbit it. To create this effect, you must have a life that is actually full. You need real focus and real priorities that have nothing to do with the other person. When you have your own rhythm, you stop chasing. You respond on your own time. You stay silent because you are busy with your mission. This creates a powerful tension. The other person realizes they aren't the center of your universe. Instead of feeling pushed away, they feel a pull to get closer. They wonder where they stand in your hierarchy. They start working to climb that list. Machiavelli knew that the most powerful position is the one that doesn't ask. When you don't demand attention, you become a mystery to be analyzed. When you don't explain your priorities, people work harder to become one of them. This is not about being cold or distant. It's about maintaining your own atmosphere. You keep the emotional warmth, but you keep the control of the gates. You decide who gets in and how long they stay. When they realize you aren't chasing them, but you aren't leaving either, they get caught in your orbit. They start to see your time as a luxury. They see your attention as a prize. And that is where the obsession becomes permanent. You didn't convince them. You didn't trap them. You simply stayed in your own orbit, and they couldn't help but start turning around you. Conclusion, the final reckoning. In the end, you will realize that you never had to bind anyone to you. You never had to use chains or clever words. You simply had to understand that the human mind seeks what it cannot fully possess. People don't bond to the person who gives the most. They bond to the person who creates the most space for them to think. Netlick creates peace, but it doesn't create loyalty. Uncertainty creates a home in the mind. If you are always there, you are just a habit. But if you are the one who knows when to step back, you become a legend. The mind always tries to finish the unfinished sentence. Be that sentence. Stay in your orbit, control the rhythm, and watch as the world begins to turn around you. If you have found yourself here at the end of this blueprint, it means you are ready to stop being the one who chases and start being the one who is sought. Leave a comment saying, "I am the center," to signal your commitment to this path. The journey to power is quiet. It is disciplined, and it is yours to take. We will see you in the next chapter of the Logos Decree.